What if the boy who had forgotten how to smile, paralyzed and silent in his wheelchair, met an orphan girl who carried no toys, no riches, only the courage to say, "Let's play"? Would you believe that moment could rebuild not just one broken family, but two shattered lives? If stories of healing and second chances touch your heart, consider subscribing and staying with us until the last page of this journey. The winter sun was pale over Lake Champlain, its rays diffused by thin clouds that drifted slowly, like gauze pulled across the sky. At Oakledge Park in Burlington, Vermont, the playground echoed with laughter and the shrill delight of children running across frosted ground, but not every child ran. 7-year-old Owen Whitman sat still at the edge of the playground, his small body framed by the broad metal arms of a wheelchair. His hands rested lightly on the wheels, but they did not move. It had been 6 months since the accident on the interstate. 6 months since the spinal cord at the level of T4-T5 was severed, silencing his legs forever. The doctors at UVM Medical Center spoke of mobility training and independence goals, words that clattered like coins but never bought him back the freedom he had once known. Beside him, his father, Alexander Alex Whitman, stood in a dark overcoat, phone in hand. The CEO of Whitman Robotics. His name often appeared in glossy magazines alongside prototypes of prosthetic limbs and adaptive devices. Yet at this moment, Alex was just another father, distracted by a flurry of emails, each one demanding his attention. He would glance up every now and then, catch sight of his son's vacant stare, then return to the glowing screen as though business could buffer the silence between them. Children darted around, their boots crunching on gravel, their laughter rising and falling like the tide. Owen watched them climb, swing, and leap, each movement a reminder of what his own body had lost. His lips pressed together, and he lowered his gaze. That was when she arrived. Hazel Brooks was 8 years old, her coat too thin for the biting wind. The hem was frayed, her mittens mismatched, her hair a tangle of chestnut curls that looked as though they had never known a careful hand. She darted past groups of children without joining them, her eyes restless, scanning, as though she belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. She stopped when she saw Owen. "You playing?" she asked. Her voice was rough, not unkind, but startling in its plainness. Owen blinked. He wasn't used to being addressed so directly, especially by other children. Most of them avoided him, their eyes sliding past the wheelchair as if it were a wall. Hazel tilted her head, noticing the wheels, the lap belt, the legs that didn't move. "That's okay," she said quickly, before he could answer. "I Spy doesn't need legs, just eyes." Something inside Owen shifted. His lips twitched, just barely, but enough to betray the first shadow of a smile. "I spy something blue," Hazel declared, spinning around, her arms spread wide. Owen looked up, scanning the park. The lake shimmered steel blue, the slide was painted bright navy, and the sky stretched above them. He pointed, a small movement but deliberate. "The lake." Hazel grinned. "You're good at this." From the bench, Alex lowered his phone. He had heard his son laugh. Just once. Light and small, but real. It was a sound he hadn't heard in half a year, not since the sirens and the sterile corridors of the hospital swallowed all joy. Alex's gaze shifted to Hazel. Her coat sleeve was torn, her sneakers too small, toes peeking through. She was clearly not from one of the tidy families that circled the playground. And then he noticed the woman across the path, Mrs. Dolores Rivera, a foster mother known in Burlington's social service circles. She sat wearily on a bench, her scarf wrapped tight, her body leaned forward as though the weight of too many children pressed on her shoulders. Alex's chest tightened. He had seen that look before, exhaustion laced with love, the kind of love that kept going even when it was frayed. Hazel darted back to Owen, Your turn, she said, nudging the wheels of his chair gently. You spy something. Owen hesitated. His world had shrunk to the radius of where he could roll, to physical therapy sessions and careful schedules. He wasn't used to being given the lead. But Hazel's eyes were wide, waiting. I spy something red, he whispered. Hazel spun again, her curls flying. The slide? No, the swing chains? Wait, your hat! She laughed, pointing at his knit beanie. Owen's smile widened, tentative but brighter. The air between them filled with something neither could name. Recognition, acceptance, the fragile beginning of belonging. Alex felt a pull he couldn't ignore. He slipped his phone back into his coat pocket and walked toward them. Hazel looked up at him, her eyes sharp, almost wary. Children in foster care often learn to scan adults quickly, weighing safety against risk. Hi there, Alex said, his voice gentle. You two seem to be having fun. Hazel narrowed her eyes. We're playing. Yes, Alex said softly. I can see that. Mrs. Rivera called Hazel's name, her voice tinged with fatigue. The girl glanced toward her foster mother, then back at Owen. See you tomorrow? Hazel asked him. Owen hesitated, then nodded. Hazel grinned and darted off, her shoes slapping against the cold ground. Alex stood beside his son, staring after her. A thought pressed at the edges of his mind, unwelcome but insistent. Hazel didn't just belong to Mrs. Rivera. She belonged to a system, one Alex knew only from headlines and board meetings on philanthropic initiatives. Yet in the span of 10 minutes, that system suddenly felt personal. He looked at Owen, who was still smiling faintly, his eyes fixed on the retreating figure of the girl. For the first time in months, Alex felt warmth spread through the frozen chambers of his chest. And somewhere deep inside, a seed was planted, a seed that whispered of second chances, of family rebuilt in ways the world rarely understood. The following evening, the Whitman estate overlooking Lake Champlain seemed almost too vast for the 3 people gathered at its entrance. Snow clung to the stone steps, and the last flush of twilight cast a lavender sheen over the frozen lake. To most, this house looked like a fortress of wealth. Ramps tucked neatly into the landscape, widened doorways that could swallow whole wheelchairs, a stairlift that hummed along the grand staircase. But for Alex Whitman, it was not a fortress at all. It was a shelter still learning how to hold the fragments of his broken family. Welcome, Alex said, his voice low but steady as he opened the door wider. His son Owen sat waiting in his chair, dressed in a navy sweater, eyes brighter than usual. Across the threshold stood Mrs. Dolores Rivera, her head wrapped in a soft scarf, and Hazel, cheeks pink from the cold, her coat zipper stuck halfway. Hazel's eyes darted everywhere, the vaulted ceiling with timber beams, the polished wood floors, the wide windows that looked out over the black water of the lake. She hesitated before stepping in, boots dripping melted snow on the rug. Shoes off, Hazel, Mrs. Rivera reminded gently. Hazel kicked off her sneakers and placed them neatly by the door. Then, without waiting, she ran toward Owen. Ready to play? She asked. Owen's mouth twitched into the faintest smile. We're having dinner first, he said, his voice steadier than the day before. Hazel folded her arms, feigning impatience. Then we play. Alex stepped aside for Mrs. Rivera, who moved more slowly. Her hands trembled slightly as she loosened her scarf. She had always carried herself with dignity, but tonight Alex noticed the paleness beneath her foundation, the faint shadows under her eyes. He caught it in the way she paused before climbing even a single step into the living room. Please, Alex said, gesturing toward the dining area. It's all ADA modified. We keep everything on one level for Owen. Ramps, Widened doorways, a therapy room near the back. Hazel's head popped up. Therapy room? Owen nodded. For PT and OT, physical therapy and occupational therapy. We practice stuff so I can get stronger. Hazel grinned. Cool. Bet you're stronger than you look. Dinner was simple, almost intentionally so. Alex had asked the chef to keep it plain. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, steamed carrots. He wanted Hazel to feel at ease, not like she was sitting at the table of a king. Still, the chandeliers glowed above them, and the wide windows spilled moonlight across the lake. Hazel barely touched her food at first. She was too busy sketching a game with peas on her plate, lining them up into a pattern. Then she looked at Owen. Rule 1, she announced. You get to boss me around for 10 minutes. Tell me what to do. I do it. Owen blinked. Why? Because games are no fun if you never get to be the leader. It was a simple thing. Yet Alex's throat tightened. Hazel had seen, in one glance, what therapists had spent months trying to coax. Agency. Control. A sense of leading rather than being managed. Tell me, Hazel prompted, eyes bright. Owen looked down at his plate. Eat a carrot. Hazel made a face, then dramatically stuffed a carrot into her mouth. See? Easy. She chewed with exaggerated noises until Owen giggled. Mrs. Rivera smiled faintly, watching. Then she coughed into her napkin, a sharp, dry cough that left her shoulders trembling. Are you all right? Alex asked quickly. Mrs. Rivera waved him off, her smile tight. Just tired. Long day. But Alex's eyes narrowed. He had noticed before, the scarf, the pallor, the way she leaned against the chair for support. He was a CEO used to reading between lines, and now those lines spelled something urgent. After dinner, Hazel and Owen wheeled down the hall together toward the therapy room. Alex walked beside Mrs. Rivera. I hope you don't mind me asking, he said carefully. Are you undergoing treatment? Her eyes flicked up at him, startled, then softened. Stage 2, ER positive, chemotherapy. The words landed heavy, yet she spoke them with quiet acceptance. I see. Alex's voice was solemn. And the children? They don't know everything, she admitted. Hazel suspects. She always suspects. But I can't tell her how bad the fatigue gets. She's had too much loss already. Alex's chest tightened. Hazel, this bright, fierce girl, stood on the brink of losing her anchor. He looked through the glass door to the therapy room, where Hazel was positioning Owen's chair beside a set of resistance bands. She cheered him on as he pulled, counting loudly, making it a contest rather than a chore. Mrs. Rivera, Alex said slowly, if the time comes when you can't continue, what happens to Hazel? Her eyes glistened. DCF. Emergency removal. They'll place her wherever a bed is open. The image struck him like a blow. Hazel's mismatched mittens, her fierce grin, her insistence on giving Owen control, and then a stranger's car, a stranger's home. I don't want her lost in the system again, Mrs. Rivera whispered. Alex looked back at Hazel, who was laughing as Owen managed another pull. He thought of the silence that had hung in his home for months, broken yesterday by a girl with tangled hair and a bold heart. He thought of his son's first smile. Perhaps fate had delivered Hazel to this house for a reason. That night, after Mrs. Rivera and Hazel left, Alex tucked Owen into bed. The boy's eyes were heavy but shining. Dad? Owen asked. Yes, son? Can Hazel come back? Alex smoothed the blanket. I think she just might. And in the stillness of the Whitman estate, Alex felt the fragile stirrings of a decision that would change all of their lives. a decision reckless to the world, but right to his heart. The Burlington YMCA pool smelled faintly of chlorine and echoes of summer. Its high ceiling reverberated with splashes and laughter, though outside the February wind still clawed at the windows. For Owen Whitman, rolling through the glass doors in his chair, the place was both promise and fear. Water had always meant freedom to him, before the accident. Now, it meant the unknown. Beside him bounded Hazel Brooks, hair in wild disarray as always, her sneakers squeaking on the tile. "You'll like this," she said confidently, as if she'd been born to give orders to reluctant boys in wheelchairs. "Water doesn't care about legs. Everyone floats." Owen's grip tightened on his wheels. His physical therapist, Marissa, crouched beside him. "She's not wrong. Aquatic therapy is one of the best interventions for T4, T5 spinal cord injuries. Less gravity, more mobility. Remember what we practiced: upper body strength, breath control." Alex stood nearby, arms crossed, watching. He had come straight from the Whitman Robotics lab, still in his pressed shirt, his phone buzzing in his pocket with unanswered calls, but his eyes were only on his son. Hazel bent down until her face was level with Owen's. "I'll get in first, then you can't chicken out." She kicked off her shoes and ran, leaping into the shallow end with a splash that startled half the lifeguards. When she surfaced, hair plastered to her face, she waved. "See? Easy." Owen's lips parted, torn between terror and fascination. With Marissa's steady support, he allowed himself to be transferred carefully into the pool, a sling lowering him inch by inch. The water closed around him, cool, buoyant. For the first time in months, his body didn't feel like an anchor. Hazel swam close, her arms spread like a guide. "Bet you can beat me to that lane rope," she challenged. Owen blinked. "I can't. Upper body only," she interrupted. "That's fair. Ready?" Something lit in his eyes. For months he had been measured in charts and acronyms. GMFM scores, 6-minute push test, outcome measures. But here, Hazel gave him something else: competition, laughter, the illusion that he was just another boy at a pool. "Go!" Hazel shouted. Owen pushed through the water, arms straining. His chair was gone, gravity muted, his strokes clumsy but real. Hazel swam beside him, exaggerating her movements, pretending to struggle. By the time he reached the rope, both were laughing so hard the lifeguards smiled from the deck. Alex pressed a hand over his mouth. He had not seen this side of his son since before the crash, the fire, the will to win. And it wasn't Marissa or any high-priced specialist who had brought it out. It was Hazel. That night, back at the Lakeview house, Owen lay in bed, still buzzing from the session. He flexed his arms proudly. "I beat her," he told Alex. Alex smoothed the blanket. "Yes, you did. Can she come again?" Alex nodded. But inside, the question had grown teeth. Hazel had given his son something doctors could not. And yet Hazel herself lived under the shadow of uncertainty, a foster placement with a caregiver fighting breast cancer and no guarantee of stability. When Alex stepped into his office, the glow of his laptop was already waiting. An email from Thomas "Tom" Hale, ESQ, his family lawyer, blinked at the top of his inbox. "Alex, if you are seriously considering petitioning to foster or adopt Hazel Brooks, you must be prepared for the following. Home study by Vermont DCF. Background check, state and federal. Assignment of a gal, guardian ad litem. Scrutiny of your ability to parent as a single father with a child who already has special needs. DCF's hesitation will be real. They will argue that a busy CEO cannot manage two vulnerable children. proceed cautiously. Tom. Alex leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The logic was airtight. He was a single father consumed by a multinational robotics empire, already balancing the medical complexities of Owen's injury. By every metric, he should not invite more responsibility. And yet, he remembered Hazel's thin coat, her laughter in the pool, the way she gave Owen back the gift of choice. He thought of Mrs. Rivera's whispered admission. If I fail, Hazel goes into emergency removal. Alex closed the laptop. His empire had been built on risk, calculated, deliberate, sometimes reckless. This decision, though, was not about market share or patents. It was about the look in his son's eyes when Hazel was near. He walked to the therapy room, where Owen's drawings still covered the corkboard. Amid stick figures and shaky letters, one stood out. 2 children holding hands under a sky of stars, a ramp leading up to a house with big windows. Above it, in Owen's blocky print, family. Alex pressed his palm against the drawing. Then we'll try, he whispered. 2 days later, Alex sat in the office of Priya Patel, LCSW, at the Vermont Department for Children and Families. The room smelled faintly of coffee and case files, its walls lined with posters about trauma-informed care and reasonable efforts. Priya folded her hands. Mr. Whitman, you understand this is not simply a matter of wanting to help. Hazel Brooks is in foster care. To bring her into your home, you must complete a home study, pass background checks, and prove your home environment meets safety standards. I know. You are a single parent. You run Whitman Robotics. You already care for a child with a spinal cord injury who requires a 504 plan and significant accommodations. Many would say you are stretched thin. Alex's jaw tightened. I don't disagree, but Hazel, she's already part of our lives. She and Owen are connected. You talk about continuity of care and least disruptive placement. Well, keeping her with us is exactly that. Priya's eyes softened. She was used to parents who wanted to give reasons. But there was something in Alex's voice, not entitlement, but urgency, that made her pause. I'll begin the paperwork, she said finally. But you must know, Hazel's file lists one living relative, her aunt, Janet Porter, in Seattle. If she petitions for kinship placement, Vermont must honor the ICPC, the Interstate Compact on the Placement of Children. That could mean Hazel leaving this state. Alex's heart sank. He imagined Hazel in a city across the country, far from Owen, far from the lake, far from the fragile bond they were building. But he forced himself to nod. Then I'll fight for her the right way, through the system, not around it. That night, Hazel curled up on the Whitmans' couch, exhausted from another round of spy games. Owen leaned against her, whispering stories only she seemed to understand. Alex stood in the doorway, watching them, the weight of Priya's words heavy on his shoulders. Kinship, ICPC, court hearings, mountains ahead. And still, he thought of Owen's drawing. 2 children, 1 house, 1 word. Family. He knew then that no matter how reckless it seemed, the fight had already begun. The Vermont Department for Children and Families sat on Pine Street in Burlington, a squat brick building softened only by the snow piled along its windowsills. Inside, the heat hummed too loud, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the waiting room chairs sagged with the weight of stories too heavy to tell. For Alexander Alex Whitman, this was not the kind of room he was accustomed to. Boardrooms were polished, glass-walled, and controlled. Here, he felt none of that power. Here, the stakes were not shareholders or patents, but the fragile soul of an 8-year-old girl who had walked into his life with tangled hair and the courage to say, "Let's play." Beside him, Owen's wheelchair squeaked faintly as the boy shifted. He clutched a notebook where he had drawn Hazel and himself at the playground, stick figures smiling under a crooked sun. Alex placed a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. The door opened. Priya Patel, LCSW, stepped in with a notepad pressed to her chest. She wore a gray cardigan, her dark hair tied neatly back, her voice calm but carrying the authority of someone who had spent years navigating broken systems. "Mr. Whitman, Owen," she said warmly. "Thank you for coming. Today we'll begin the preliminary home study." Alex rose. "We're ready." Priya gestured them into a small conference room. The walls were lined with posters about trauma-informed care, kinship priority, and the stages of grief in children. A coffee pot hissed on the counter, filling the air with a faint, bitter scent. "Let's start with basics," Priya said, clicking her pen. "The home study requires a full safety assessment. Fire alarms, locked cabinets, stair access, firearms affidavit. Even if you don't own any, you'll provide financial disclosures, bank statements, tax returns, employment proof, background checks, both state and federal, and 3 character references." Alex nodded. "You'll have it all by the end of the week." "Good," Priya said. "But paperwork is only the surface. What matters is showing us your home is not just ADA compliant, but emotionally safe for Hazel." Owen lifted his chin. "She already calls me brother." Priya's pen paused mid-note. "That's important," she murmured. "Continuity of care is one of the best interests factors. We'll document it." She turned to Alex. "But you must also understand, Vermont statute requires us to prioritize kinship placement whenever possible. If Hazel has blood relatives willing and able to petition, they will come first." Alex felt the air in the room sharpen. "Relatives?" Priya flipped through Hazel's file. "At present, one is recorded. Her maternal aunt, Janet Porter of Seattle. She has not had custody, but the file indicates she's maintained occasional contact. If she files, Vermont would have to coordinate under the Interstate Compact on the Placement of Children, ICPC. Alex leaned back, jaw tightening. "And Hazel could be moved across the country." Priya nodded gently. "Yes, unless a judge determines it's not in her best interests." She hesitated, then tapped the file again. "There's also a note about Hazel's paternal grandparents, the Hendersons, in Alaska. No contact in years. But if they choose to surface, they would have standing." The words landed like stones. Alex glanced at Owen, who was scribbling "Family =US" in block letters across the page. He thought of Hazel's thin coat, her quick wit, her hand resting so naturally on Owen's wheelchair. The idea of her being uprooted, whether to Seattle or Alaska, made his chest ache. Priya closed the file. "Our duty is to follow the law, but don't underestimate Hazel's voice. The court increasingly honors what articulate children express. If she says Vermont feels like home, that matters." That evening, back at the Lakeview house, snow sifted down against the tall windows overlooking Lake Champlain. Hazel sat cross-legged on the rug, playing I Spy with Owen, her laughter echoing through the wide halls. Alex stood at the doorway, Mrs. Rivera beside him, her scarf wrapped loosely around her head. "She fits here," Mrs. Rivera whispered. "Better than anywhere I've ever seen." Alex nodded. "But the system doesn't care if something feels right. It cares about statutes." Mrs. Rivera's smile was tired but steady. "Then fight. Fight with the statutes, too. Hazel deserves more than bouncing from house to house." Hazel shouted from across the room. "Dad! It's your turn to spy!" Alex blinked. He hadn't realized she had started calling him that. Dad. The word pierced through his armor, fragile and fierce all at once. He walked over, crouched beside the children. I spy. Something golden. Hazel spun, curls flying. The firelight! Owen grinned. Or Hazel's smile. The three of them laughed together, the sound rising above the storm outside. Yet at the back of Alex's mind, the shadows of Seattle and Alaska loomed. Later that night, after Hazel had fallen asleep, curled up with a blanket, Alex sat at his desk. His laptop glowed with a message from Tom Hale, ESQ. Alex, Priya is right. Kinship petitions carry weight. If Janet Porter files in Seattle, ICPC could delay or derail placement here, and if the Hendersons in Alaska surface, bloodline doctrine may sway the court. We'll need evidence, Hazel's attachments, Owen's progress, expert testimony, and Hazel's own voice. Judges listen when children speak truth. Tom, Alex closed the laptop and looked toward Hazel's sleeping form. He remembered her defiant words in the playground. I spy doesn't need legs, just eyes. She had given his son back a smile. She had given him a reason to hope again. Whatever the statutes said, Alex knew the truth. This child already belonged here. And as the snow thickened over Lake Champlain, he vowed he would fight every compact, every precedent, every doctrine, until the law saw it too. The call came on a Tuesday evening, just as the snow began to fall again over Burlington. Alex had just finished helping Owen with his math homework when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was Priya Patel, calm but heavy with news. Mrs. Rivera has been admitted to UVM Medical Center, she said. Complications from chemotherapy. Hazel can't remain in her home tonight. We've placed her temporarily with the Collins family. It's only an emergency placement, but we thought you should know. Alex gripped the phone tighter. He had known this moment might come. Mrs. Rivera's fatigue had deepened, her cough had worsened, but hearing it aloud struck like a hammer. Hazel, who had already lost so much, was being uprooted again. We'll visit her, Alex said firmly. Tonight. The Collins house stood at the edge of Burlington, a cheerful, clapboard home with too many coats on the hooks and the cluttered warmth of a family stretched thin. 3 foster children already tumbled through the halls, their laughter masking the fractures of displacement. Hazel sat apart on a sofa, arms wrapped around her knees, her mismatched socks damp from the snow. When Owen rolled in, clutching the photo of their swimming day, her face crumpled and then stiffened again. They said I can't stay, she whispered, eyes darting toward the social worker's notes on the kitchen table. Owen wheeled closer. His small hand trembled as he pulled out the photo. It showed them laughing at the YMCA pool, water dripping from their hair, smiles as bright as the overhead lights. He pressed it into her hands. Family are the ones who stay, Owen said, voice steady in a way that startled even Alex. Even if you're here, we'll stay. Hazel stared at the photo, then at him. Her chin quivered. But they'll make me choose, Vermont or Seattle. I don't want to pick. You don't have to, Owen said simply. You can have both. Hazel frowned. Both? School here, summers there. That way, you're never gone. Hazel blinked, the idea settling like a fragile seed in her chest. For the first time that night, she let herself imagine a life that wasn't all or nothing. The following evening, Alex sat at his desk. Hazel and Owen perched beside him as a video call opened across 4 screens. On the left was Priya Patel at DCF, her office fluorescent behind her. Next was Tom Hale, legal pads stacked high. On the third window, Janet Porter appeared from Seattle, her university district apartment dimly lit. Hazel sat between Alex and Owen, clutching the photo tightly. Priya began formally. We are here to discuss Hazel Brooks's placement options. As you know, Mrs. Rivera is in hospital care. Mr. Whitman has expressed interest in assuming foster placement, but under ICPC, Miss Porter in Seattle has also filed a petition. Hazel leaned forward before any adult could answer. Her voice was small but fierce. I don't want to choose. Priya blinked. Hazel, I want Vermont and Seattle, Hazel said quickly, words tumbling over each other. Vermont for school, because Owen is my brother. Seattle for summer, because Aunt Janet is family too. That's my plan. Don't make me lose one to have the other. Silence filled the call. Alex looked at Janet, who pressed a trembling hand to her lips. Janet spoke softly. Hazel, sweetheart, if Vermont feels like home, I won't fight you. If summers are what keep us together, then I'll wait for you here. Tom cleared his throat. This arrangement is unconventional. Courts rarely endorse split placements. But if both parties agree, we can propose it as a transition plan preserving attachments. Priya nodded slowly. DCF's priority is minimizing trauma. Hazel articulating her own agency carries weight. Judges don't often hear such clarity from an 8-year-old. Hazel turned to Owen, gripping his hand. Then that's what we'll tell them. My plan. Owen squeezed back, a small warrior in a blazer too big for his shoulders. When the call ended, Hazel sagged against Alex's arm. They'll listen, right? Alex kissed her curls. You were brave. And brave voices get heard. That night, Owen lay in bed with the photo propped on his nightstand. Hazel curled on the pull-out sofa in the guest room, the glow of the lake filtering through the blinds. Alex checked on her one last time. She was still awake, staring at the ceiling. Dad, she whispered. The word was fragile, but deliberate. Yes, Hazel? Promise you won't stop fighting? Alex sat at her side, brushing back her tangled curls. I promise. We'll walk through every door, climb every ramp, sit in every courtroom, until they see what I see. You already belong. Hazel searched his eyes. Even if the judge says no? Especially then, Alex whispered, because family doesn't quit. Her small hand found his. For the first time since Mrs. Rivera had been taken to the hospital, Hazel closed her eyes and slept. The next morning, snow glittered across the lake, turning the world into a canvas of silver and white. Owen wheeled into the kitchen where Hazel sat sketching on scrap paper. She had drawn 2 houses connected by a bridge, one labeled Vermont, the other Seattle. Above them, a star burned bright. What's the star? Owen asked. Hazel grinned sleepily. Family. It's what makes the bridge strong. Alex looked at the drawing, his chest aching with both fear and hope. It was only a child's plan, but sometimes, he thought, the wisdom of children cuts straighter than any statute. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this drawing might become the blueprint that carried them all through the storm to come. Snow had melted into gray slush along Burlington's streets by the time Alex and Hazel stepped into the Chittenden County Family Court. The building, all stone and steel, seemed to shiver with the weight of too many families who had come here broken, waiting for strangers in robes to decide where children would sleep at night. Hazel walked close to Owen's wheelchair as Alex guided them down the corridor. She wore her best dress, borrowed, a little too large, but her head was held high. Owen's blazer still didn't quite fit, the sleeves bunched awkwardly at his wrists. Yet together they looked like what they already felt, a brother and sister bracing against the storm. Inside the courtroom, Judge Eleanor Winters presided with her familiar calm. Her hair was white, her eyes sharp, her reputation one of fairness tempered by practicality. The gallery was sparse, only Priya Patel, Tom Hale, and a handful of clerks scribbling notes. On the far side of the aisle, Janet Porter appeared on a large monitor, live from her University District apartment in Seattle. She sat propped in a chair, a blanket around her shoulders, her eyes dimmed by fatigue, but her will unbroken. The guardian ad litem, Marion Brooks, rose first to deliver her report. "Your Honor," she began, "Hazel Brooks has been in foster care since age 6. In the last 2 months, she has formed a significant attachment to Owen Whitman, who refers to her as his sister. She, in turn, identifies Alexander Whitman as her father. My interviews show Hazel has regained stability and shows decreased trauma markers in this placement." She paused, flipping a page. "However, kinship statutes remain binding. Miss Porter of Seattle has filed under ICPC. Hazel herself has expressed a desire for what she calls a split placement, school year in Vermont, summers in Seattle. This is highly unusual, but I submit it reflects the child's agency and should be weighed." Murmurs rustled through the gallery. Judge Winters lifted a hand. "We will hear all voices." Tom Hale stepped forward next, calm as ever. "Your Honor, the best interests of the child cannot be reduced to bloodlines alone. The Whitman home is ADA compliant, trauma-informed, and Hazel is thriving academically and socially. To uproot her now would undo that progress." He gestured toward Owen and Hazel. "Continuity of care, sibling-like bonds, stability. These are not abstractions. They are what keep a child from fracturing further." Then he added pointedly, "And Hazel's voice deserves respect. She has articulated a desire not to lose either bond. That is remarkable clarity for an 8-year-old. Janet's attorney spoke from Seattle. "Your Honor, Miss Porter does not seek to disrupt Hazel's stability. She simply wishes the law to recognize blood relatives. Summers in Seattle allow Hazel to maintain that connection, but we acknowledge Hazel's current progress in Vermont." The judge turned her gaze to Hazel. "Miss Brooks, do you wish to speak for yourself?" Hazel stood, her knees trembling slightly. "I don't want to leave Owen. He's my brother. But I don't want to lose Aunt Janet either. I want Vermont and Seattle, school here, summer there. Please don't make me choose." Her voice cracked, but her eyes blazed with a courage far older than her years. Judge Winters leaned back, fingers steepled. The psychologist took the stand next, explaining attachment theory, trauma recovery, and the danger of sudden severance. Hazel's request, while unorthodox, is psychologically sound. Allowing her to retain both attachments may prevent regression. In my professional opinion, honoring her voice will minimize trauma. Priya Patel, the caseworker, added, "DCF's role is to ensure safety. Both Vermont and Seattle homes are safe, but the least disruptive placement is continuing Hazel's school year in Vermont while establishing supervised summer visitation in Seattle. This balances kinship with continuity." At this, Judge Winters raised a brow. "And if other relatives emerge?" The room stilled. Priya glanced at her notes. "There is mention of paternal grandparents in Alaska, the Hendersons. They have not contacted Hazel in years. But should they petition, the court would be required to consider them." Alex's stomach clenched. The name was like a shadow entering the room. He thought of Hazel's mother's stories, her warnings about people who cared more about money than children. He forced his jaw still. The fight was not with ghosts yet, but the warning had been planted. Finally, Judge Winters delivered her decision. Her voice was steady, her gavel resting quietly at hand. This court recognizes the primacy of kinship under Vermont law and the ICPC. However, we also recognize the extraordinary clarity of this child's voice and the stability she has found in her current placement. Therefore, I issue the following temporary order. Hazel Brooks shall remain in Vermont with Mr. Whitman and his son for the duration of the school year. During summer recess, she shall visit Miss Porter in Seattle under ICPC oversight. After 6 months, the guardian ad litem will reassess, and this court will reevaluate placement. The gavel struck once. It was neither victory nor defeat. It was a fragile bridge, narrow but real. Outside, Hazel clutched Owen's hand as they rolled down the courthouse steps. "Did I do okay?" she whispered. Owen grinned. "You were amazing." Alex bent low between them. "You gave them your truth. That's more powerful than anything Tom or I could say." Hazel bit her lip. "But it's only for 6 months." Alex squeezed her shoulder. 6 months can change the world, and we'll be ready for whatever comes next. That night, back at the Lakeview house, the children spread paper across the table. Hazel drew 2 houses again, one with maple trees, one with rain clouds. This time she added a bridge, stronger and straighter than before. Overhead, a star shone bright. "It's us," she explained. "The bridge works because we're holding it up together." Alex looked at the drawing, his chest tight. He thought of Priya's warning, of Henderson's shadows still waiting in the wings. But for this moment, with Hazel's laughter echoing through the house and Owen wheeling close beside her, he let himself believe the bridge could hold. For 6 months, at least, Hazel was home. March rains turned Seattle's University District into a wash of gray and silver. Puddles shimmered along cracked sidewalks, buses hissed past, and the air smelled of wet pavement and roasted coffee from the corner cafes. For Hazel, stepping into her Aunt Janet's apartment felt like entering another world. A place quieter, more fragile, but touched with the faint warmth of family she barely knew. The visit had been approved as part of the ICPC trial placement. Hazel's week-long stay was meant to ease her into the idea of summers in Seattle. Alex insisted on traveling with her, staying in a nearby hotel, unwilling to let her face this new arrangement alone. Owen remained in Vermont, calling each night on video chat, his voice bright but his eyes shadowed by missing her. Janet's apartment was small, 2nd floor, narrow hallways, peeling paint, but the shelves brimmed with books, photographs, and lavender-scented candles. Hazel explored eagerly, touching frames with old pictures of her mother and Janet as girls. She seemed curious, but beneath her curiosity flickered unease. "Aunt Janet, do you get tired a lot?" Hazel asked one evening, curling against her on the sofa. Janet brushed back her curls with a trembling hand. "Everyone gets tired in the rain, sweetheart." Hazel frowned, unconvinced. Children from foster care learn quickly to read between words. Alex noticed it too. The second night, when he returned from a late business call, he heard the retching through the bathroom door. He pushed it open and found Janet hunched over the sink, pale and shaking, a towel pressed to her lips. She caught his reflection in the mirror. "It's nothing," she whispered. "The flu." Alex crouched beside her. "I know a lie when I hear one. Tell me the truth." Janet closed her eyes. The silence was heavy, broken only by the rain tapping the window. Then her voice cracked. "Liver metastases. The oncologist says maybe 6 months. A year if the drugs hold." The words hollowed out the room. Alex gripped the edge of the sink, steadying himself. "Does Hazel know?" "No," Janet said quickly. "Please, don't tell her. She's only 8. She deserves at least 1 summer without counting breaths." Alex stared at her, torn. His instinct was honesty, but her plea carried the weight of mercy. 2 days later, he accompanied Janet to UW Medical Center. The oncologist laid out charts, treatment plans, and options already narrowing. The language was clinical: liver mets, targeted therapy, palliative care, but Alex translated each word into one truth: Janet was dying. When the doctor left, Janet pulled a folder from her bag. "I've drafted a will," she said. "Hazel's name is here, and so is yours. Testamentary guardianship. It names you if I can't continue. Alex shook his head. Janet, you've given her what I can't, Janet said firmly. Stability, a sibling, a future. She loves Owen like blood, and she trusts you. Don't let the system scatter her again. Her hands trembled as she slid a USB drive across the table. I also recorded something for her. A message. For when the time comes. Alex swallowed hard. He felt the weight of her trust settle over him like armor and chains all at once. I'll honor it, he said softly. Tears shimmered in Janet's eyes, but she smiled faintly. Thank you. Just let her laugh while she can. That evening, Hazel climbed onto Alex's lap at the hotel, restless. Seattle feels heavy, she said. Aunt Janet sleeps all the time, and sometimes I hear her in the bathroom. Why won't anyone tell me what's wrong? Alex's heart twisted. He remembered Janet's plea. Let her have one summer free of fear. He kissed Hazel's hair. Some things aren't yours to carry yet. What you can do is give her joy. Hazel's eyes narrowed. So, I'm supposed to keep her smiling? Yes, Alex whispered. That's the most important medicine she'll ever have. Hazel nodded solemnly, as if given a sacred task. On their last day, rain streaked the apartment windows. Janet hugged Hazel tightly, longer than Hazel expected. Go back to Vermont, sweetheart. Learn, laugh. I'll see you this summer. Hazel tilted her head. Promise? Janet's lips trembled. Promise, she whispered. As Alex led Hazel down the stairwell, he glanced back. Janet stood in the doorway, her frame small against the fading light. She raised a hand, and for a moment Alex saw both her courage and her fragility. Outside, Hazel tugged his coat sleeve. Dad, why does it feel like everyone keeps secrets from me? Alex crouched beside her, meeting her eyes. Because sometimes adults are afraid the truth will hurt. But remember, no matter what happens, you won't face anything alone. Hazel leaned into him, clutching the photo of Owen she carried in her pocket. She whispered, Then I'll be okay. Alex wrapped his arm around her as they stepped into the rain. The storm of Seattle pressed down, but inside he carried Janet's trust, Hazel's hope, and the knowledge that their fight was far from over. By October, Vermont was ablaze. The hills around Burlington glowed crimson and gold, maple leaves falling in spirals that painted the sidewalks like a quilt. At the Whitman estate, the season had woven itself into the rhythms of a home that, for the first time in years, felt alive. Hazel skipped down the ramp after school, her backpack bouncing, chattering about her science project while Owen wheeled beside her. Teachers had approved his 504 plan and IEP, and Hazel had taken it upon herself to become his unofficial advocate. She saved him a seat at lunch, made classmates learn the rules of spy adapted for the playground, and told anyone who stared too long at his chair, What? He's faster than you anyway. For Alex, watching them grow into each other was a kind of resurrection. Dinner no longer meant silence. It meant Hazel rattling on until Owen teased her, and laughter bubbling up like a spring where there had once been drought. Evenings meant therapy sessions that felt more like games. Hazel timing Owen's push-ups, or daring him to beat his last roll time down the ramp. You're stronger every week, Hazel declared one night, her eyes shining as Owen managed to transfer with less help. Next summer, we're racing at the pool. Owen grinned. And I'll win. Only because I'll let you, she teased. Alex stood in the doorway, heart swelling. They were building something rare, a sibling bond forged not by blood, but by resilience. But joy has a way of drawing shadows. The first sign arrived in a thick envelope postmarked Anchorage, Alaska. Alex slid it open at his desk overlooking Lake Champlain, the autumn sky mirrored on the water. His eyes scanned the legal language. Petition for custody. Henderson versus Whitman. The Hendersons, Hazel's paternal grandparents. They claimed blood rights. They claimed fitness. They claimed Hazel was their granddaughter by law, and that Vermont had erred in placing her with a non-relative. Attached were affidavits dripping with sanctimony, describing Alex as a wealthy benefactor exploiting a child for image. Worse, there were bank transfer records, small sums Janet had sent monthly, now twisted as evidence of financial mismanagement. Alex saw it for what it was: leverage, greed cloaked in duty. His pulse hammered. He dialed Tom Hale immediately. "Tom, they've filed," Alex said, voice clipped. Tom's sigh was heavy on the line. "The Hendersons are invoking the bloodline doctrine. Some judges still lean that way, and since they're direct relatives, Alaska can press under ICPC. They've never called Hazel. Never written. Her father cut ties years ago." "I know," Tom said, "but the law doesn't always reward presence. Sometimes it rewards biology. We'll need proof, letters, testimony, timelines, and Hazel's voice." Alex looked through the glass to the children sprawled in the living room, Hazel's curls glowing in the firelight as she leaned over Owen's game board. His jaw set. "Then we'll be ready." The second blow came days later. Alex had just tucked Owen in when his phone buzzed. It was a call from Seattle, the hospital number flashing across the screen. His chest tightened even before he answered. The voice was gentle, professional. "Mr. Whitman, I'm sorry. Janet Porter passed away this evening." Alex sat heavily in the chair by Owen's bed. The room spun, the firelight flickering. He whispered his thanks, numb, then hung up. Owen stirred. "Dad, what's wrong?" Alex smoothed his hair. "Nothing for you to worry about tonight. Go to sleep, son." But when he stepped into the hallway, Hazel was waiting. She had seen his face. "It's Aunt Janet, isn't it?" she asked, voice trembling. Alex knelt, pulling her close. "Yes, Hazel. She's gone." The girl buried her face in his chest, sobs breaking through her small body. "She promised Summer," she cried. "She promised." Alex held her tighter, his own tears finally falling. "And she kept it as long as she could. Some promises, they live even after someone is gone." Hazel clung to him, shaking. "Why does everyone leave me?" Alex pulled back, cupping her face. "Not everyone. Look at me. Look at Owen. We are not leaving. Not ever." Hazel searched his eyes, desperate for truth. Finally, she whispered, "Then fight them. Don't let anyone take me away." His chest ached. "I swear it." 2 days later, Tom came to the estate with files spread across the dining table. Owen and Hazel sat nearby, coloring, their laughter strangely out of place against the weight of legal strategy. Tom pointed to Janet's signed guardianship papers and the USB drive containing her recorded message. "This is gold. It proves intent, clarity, and continuity. Her testimony, even posthumous, will carry weight." Alex nodded grimly. "And the Hendersons?" "We'll subpoena records showing estrangement, phone logs, Hazel's father's letters. We'll paint their petition for what it is, opportunistic. But be warned, Alex, bloodline is persuasive. We'll need Hazel to speak." Alex looked at her, bent over her drawing, Owen's wheelchair beside her like a second shadow. She had drawn a house under maple trees, a lake glinting beside it, 3 stick figures holding hands. At the bottom, in uneven letters, she had written, "Home." He swallowed. She's already speaking. That evening, Hazel asked to sit by the fire. She placed Janet's letter on her lap, the one she had been too young to read at first. Alex read it aloud, his voice breaking at the words. Light is something passed on, not extinguished. Alex and Owen are your light now, and you, Hazel, are theirs. When he finished, Hazel wiped her eyes. Then we'll keep shining, even if the Hendersons come. Owen wheeled closer, resting his head against her arm. They can't take you. You're ours. Alex watched them, his throat tight. Outside, leaves swirled in fiery drifts across the lawn, a storm of color before the long winter. Inside, 3 hearts clung to one another, already bracing for the colder battle to come. The first snow of November glazed Burlington in white, blanketing the marble steps of the Chittenden County Family Court. Inside, the air hummed with hushed anticipation. Today was not another review. Today was final. The Hendersons' custody petition would be weighed against Alex Whitman's bid to adopt Hazel Brooks. The courtroom felt colder than the wind outside. Reporters filled the back benches, drawn by the unlikely headline, "A robotics billionaire fighting grandparents in family court." At the front sat Judge Eleanor Winters, calm and severe, her gavel poised but still. Hazel sat in the front row beside Owen, her small hand wrapped tightly around his. Alex stood behind them, shoulders squared. Across the aisle, the Hendersons of Alaska sat stiffly, their lawyer spreading out files with a flourish. Their eyes avoided Hazel's, perhaps from guilt, perhaps from calculation. The guardian ad litem, Marion Brooks, rose first. Your Honor, Hazel Brooks has been in foster care for 2 years. In the last 8 months, she has formed a profound attachment to Owen and Alexander Whitman. She identifies them as brother and father. She has expressed fear of losing either, and her drawings, school reports, and interviews demonstrate stability here. She closed her folder. The Hendersons are biological kin, but Hazel herself has voiced, family are the ones who stay. This court must weigh bloodline against lived presence. Murmurs rippled across the benches. The Hendersons' lawyer rose sharply. Your Honor, biology is not optional. Hazel is the granddaughter of my clients. To deny them in favor of a non-relative, however wealthy, is to trample the principle of kinship the law was built on. Bloodline is not replaceable. Hazel flinched at the word blood. She whispered fiercely to Owen, Blood didn't stay. Owen squeezed her hand. Then came Tom Hale. Calm as steel, he stood before the bench. Your Honor, no one denies biology, but the law requires clear and convincing evidence of what serves Hazel's best interests. Blood without presence is absence. Blood without love is just ink on a certificate. He lifted a packet of letters. These are from Hazel's late father, estranged from the Hendersons for decades. He severed ties due to neglect. He never entrusted them with his child, even in death. He set down another file. And these are bank records. Modest sums Janet Porter sent monthly, twisted now into claims of mismanagement. Yet they reveal something else. The Hendersons' sudden interest in Hazel only after Whitman Robotics announced a philanthropic trust.
Timing speaks louder than claims. The Hendersons shifted uncomfortably. Tom straightened. We do not stand here against family. We stand here for Hazel's truth. And that truth is simple. She already has a family, one that has stayed, shown up, and kept promises. Witnesses followed. Priya Patel confirmed Hazel's progress, her school attendance, her laughter returning, her bond with Owen stabilizing her trauma. A psychologist testified that uprooting her again would risk regression, night terrors, mistrust, loss of attachment. Yet the room still teetered, balanced on the knife edge of precedent. Judge Winters folded her hands. I would like to hear from the child herself. Hazel's small frame rose, her knees trembling but her voice steady. My dad says family are the ones who stay, she began. The Hendersons didn't stay. When my mom died, they didn't come. When Mrs. Rivera got sick, they didn't call. But Owen was there. Alex was there. They didn't leave. Her eyes filled, but her voice grew stronger. I don't need blood. I need promises that don't break. Owen is my brother. Alex is my dad. That's my family. Please don't take that away. The silence after her words was thick with awe. Even the Hendersons lowered their eyes. Tom moved quietly to his last piece of evidence. Your Honor, before her passing, Hazel's Aunt Janet Porter recorded a statement, with the court's permission. Judge Winters nodded. The lights dimmed. The monitor flickered on. Janet appeared, her face pale but her eyes resolute. If you are watching this, she said softly, then my fight is over. My last request is simple. Let Hazel stay where she has already found home. Alex Whitman has given her stability, love, and a sibling in Owen. I name him guardian because I trust him more than anyone to keep Hazel safe. Bloodline did not raise her. Love did. Please honor that. The screen faded to black. Hazel clutched Owen's arm, tears streaming silently. Alex bowed his head, hand over his mouth. Even Tom, seasoned as he was, let out a slow breath. Judge Winters sat in silence for a long moment. Then she spoke. This court recognizes the rights of kinship, but rights alone cannot outweigh a child's best interests. Hazel Brooks has spoken with clarity beyond her years. She has a home in Vermont, a brother in Owen, and a father in Alexander Whitman. To sever those bonds would be to fracture her further. Her voice grew firm. Therefore, I rule as follows. Custody shall remain with Alexander Whitman. Adoption proceedings are permitted to proceed. The Hendersons are granted supervised visitation to preserve biological ties. But Hazel's permanency lies with the Whitman household. The gavel struck once. The sound echoed like a bell of release. Hazel collapsed into Owen's arms, sobbing. We did it. Owen whispered, Told you. You don't have to choose. Alex closed his eyes, gratitude breaking through in tears he could no longer hide. Tom placed a steady hand on his shoulder. You just made precedent, he murmured. Outside, snow fell thickly, coating the courthouse steps. Alex knelt between Hazel and Owen, arms around both. Hazel looked up at him through tears, her voice a whisper of fierce relief. You kept your promise. Alex kissed her forehead. No, Hazel. We kept it, together. And as they stepped out into the snow, 3 hearts beat as one, bound not by blood, but by presence, resilience, and the proof of love that the law could finally recognize. December came to Burlington quietly, the kind of snow that did not roar but whispered, flakes drifting in slow spirals across Lake Champlain, coating the Whitman estate in silver. The lake itself lay frozen in patches, glittering under a pale moon. Inside, the house that had once echoed with silence now pulsed with warmth, laughter, and the steady rhythm of a family remade. It had been 3 weeks since Judge Winters struck the gavel. 3 weeks since Hazel Brooks was no longer foster child, but Hazel Whitman, daughter by law as well as love. The final decree of adoption hung framed on the wall in Alex's study beside Owen's newly laminated 504 plan. 2 documents, side by side, one proving Hazel's belonging, the other securing Owen's path. To Alex, they were not trophies, but vows, records of promises kept. On a snowy Saturday morning, Hazel and Owen sprawled on the living room rug. A board game stretched between them. Owen wore the medal he had won at the adaptive swimming competition, refusing to take it off even for breakfast. Hazel teased him mercilessly, calling him Mr. Champion, but her grin betrayed pride. "You owe me 3 chores if I win," Hazel declared, moving her piece triumphantly. "You cheated," Owen protested, though laughter chased the words. "I adapted the rules," Hazel shot back. From the armchair, Alex chuckled. "Sounds like a future lawyer in the making." Hazel smirked. "Or maybe a judge. Somebody has to teach the world that family isn't just blood." Her words landed like a benediction, simple and fierce. That afternoon, Priya Patel stopped by for one final check. She set down her clipboard, taking in the sight of Hazel curled on the couch, Owen beside her, the two sharing a blanket. "They look like they've been siblings forever," Priya murmured. Alex nodded. "They've made each other whole." Priya signed the last page with a flourish, then handed Alex the file. "Your case will be cited for years, you know. A soft precedent showing the weight of a child's voice. But beyond the law, you've built something rare. Permanency isn't paperwork, it's presence. And you've shown up." Alex shook her hand, gratitude etched into his face. "Thank you for listening when it mattered." She smiled, slipping on her coat. "No, Alex. Thank Hazel. She carried the truth in her own words. You just made room for the court to hear it." That night, the house glowed with the scent of pine. Hazel and Owen decorated a small Christmas tree in the corner, hanging mismatched ornaments. Owen's medal, Hazel's paper stars, and at the top, a simple angel Janet had sent years before. When the last ornament was hung, Alex gathered them by the fire. He carried a small wooden box, worn but polished. "What's that?" Hazel asked. "Something Janet left for you," Alex said softly. "She asked me to wait until the adoption was final." Hazel's hands trembled as she opened the box. Inside lay a folded letter in Janet's careful script. She spread it open, her eyes racing across the words as Alex read aloud. "My dearest Hazel, if you are reading this, then my journey is done. But yours has only begun. Do not grieve for me, little one. My joy is knowing you are safe. Remember, light is something passed on, not extinguished. Alex and Owen are your light now, and you, Hazel, are theirs. Keep shining. With all my love, Aunt Janet." Hazel pressed the letter to her chest, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Owen leaned into her, whispering, "You still have her, in the light." Alex wrapped his arms around them both, his own tears falling freely. "She'll always be with us, in every promise we keep." On Christmas Eve, the snow fell heavier, muffling the world outside. Hazel hung her stocking beside Owen's, carefully gluing glitter letters spelling out her new last name, Whitman. She stepped back, her grin wide. "It's official now," she said proudly. Owen teased, "Hope Santa knows you cheated at board games." Hazel stuck out her tongue, and their laughter filled the halls. After dinner, Alex carried a telescope to the balcony overlooking the lake. The night sky opened above them, vast and jeweled. He guided Hazel and Owen to peer through the lens. "Why a telescope?" Hazel asked, breath fogging in the cold air. "Because stargazing is a ritual now," Alex replied. "Every snowfall, every season, we look up. We remember the ones who gave us light, and we promise to keep shining it forward." Hazel peered through, gasping at Orion's belt. Owen followed, his eyes wide with wonder. Then they stood together, Alex's arms around both children, gazing at the sky. "Family," Alex whispered, "is the constellation we build, Not the one we're born with, but the one that stays.
Hazel leaned her head against his chest.
Home at last, she whispered back.
Snowflakes swirled around them, settling gently on their shoulders, on the telescope pointed at infinity. And for the first time since tragedy had torn his world apart, Alexander Whitman felt not like a man who had lost everything, but like a father whose life had just begun. Some stories do not end. They simply arrive at the place where healing begins. Hazel, Owen, and Alex remind us that family is not only blood, but the promises we keep, the presence we choose, and the light we pass on. Thank you for staying with us until the very last page of this journey. If stories of love, hope, and second chances touch your heart, we warmly invite you to subscribe and walk with us into the next story.